C-SPAN's Q&A.
The issue of water infrastructure financing and safe drinking water was the focus of a hearing today on Capitol Hill. A Senate Environment and Public Works subcommittee heard from representatives from a local utility and Metropolitan Planning Board on their recommendations for funding and modernizing the nation's water systems. Also testifying was a resident of Arkansas who talked about his family's problems getting access to safe drinking water and the help he received from a rural government assistance program that installed well systems in his community. This hour and 30-minute hearing is chaired by Arkansas Republican John Bozeman.
This hearing of the Subcommittee on Fisheries, Water, and Wildlife to order. We are here today to discuss innovative financing and funding to address America's deficient water infrastructure. The purpose of this hearing is simple. Today we will be discussing America's current approach towards drinking water and wastewater infrastructure investment. Many members of this committee, including myself, often reference the American Society of Civil Engineers, ASCE, Infrastructure Report Card. Currently, the ASCE grades America's drinking water infrastructure with a D. Wastewater has a slightly better grade, a D+. It reminds some of us our grades in school. Not you.
I'm glad you didn't look this way.
This is not a rural problem or a big city problem. It's not a Republican or a Democrat problem. This is a national emergency, and we need to find solutions before it's too late. It is one thing to see these terrible grades on paper, but what does this actually mean for people in their day-to-day lives? Usually when we imagine life without clean and efficient drinking water and wastewater, we picture communities that do not resemble our own. We picture far-off countries that do not have all the blessings that America has. Sadly, this could not be further from the truth. Currently, an estimated 1.7 million Americans live without access to clean, running, drinking water in their homes. There are tremendous infrastructure needs in rural America. The estimated cost to provide improved rural drinking water facilities totals more than $60 billion, with the needs of water systems in American, Indian, and Alaska Native villages accounting for $3.3 billion alone. We are in a position to address this problem. We have an administration that has made infrastructure investment a top priority. Coupled with the bipartisan support in both the Senate and the House, we have an incredible opportunity to work across the aisle and get back on track to making America's water infrastructure the best in the world. While we all agree that infrastructure investment is a necessity, this hearing will look at common sense approaches, along with new ideas, to fund these important projects so we can give the American people that basic service they desperately need and deserve. A popular funding strategy at the moment is the public-private partnership, or the P3. P3s are a crucial component of the administration's proposal and are necessary to get to the $1 trillion investment in infrastructure that the plan promises. While P3s are a great way to fund certain projects, it's not a magic cure for all. P3s are a great tool in our toolbox. However, it is important to realize P3s do not always work in small rural states such as Arkansas. That being said, a combination of innovative financing, private investment, along with state and federal funding, such as loans and grants, is a good way to address the problem. The problem will not be solved with a one-size-fits-all approach. We will have to use every funding and financing mechanism at our disposal, while giving communities the tools to help themselves to fix the problem. For a moment, let's picture a small community in rural Arkansas that is actively trying to update an aging and deficient wastewater system. This community has a small tax base, meaning any infrastructure improvements needed would make the cost of utilities simply unaffordable. A community like the one that I've described has few options to fund such a project. They could look toward the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, or WIFIA program, which provides low-interest treasury rates to finance water projects. But this project is not likely large enough to receive any assistance. Not a problem. Larger communities using WIFIA to fund large-scale projects will free up the State Revolving Fund, the SRF, for smaller communities. The Clean Water State Revolving Fund and the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund provide funding assistance to repair, replace, or expand wastewater treatment and drinking water treatment systems consistent with the requirements of the Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act. This community could also fund the project with tax-free municipal bonds. Since 1913, bond interest earnings have been exempt from federal income tax, leading investors to offer low borrowing rates to communities. In 2016 alone, communities issued nearly $38 billion in municipal bonds to pay for water infrastructure projects, translating into millions of dollars in savings for local water ratepayers. Lastly, the small community I'm describing could look toward the federal government along with their state governments for assistance. There are a multitude of grants available to communities to help them help themselves. As you can see, we have many tools at our disposal. The trick is finding what works for each community rather than a one-size-fits-all. What works in Rogers, Arkansas might not work in Chicago, Illinois. Nonetheless, we have the ability to fund important projects across the country. The time to act is now. We have an incredible opportunity to develop an infrastructure bill that directly addresses America's drinking water and wastewater infrastructure challenges. I want to thank our witnesses today for attending today's hearing, and I look forward to hearing real-world examples of the problems average Americans are facing. I'm interested in seeing what kind of common-sense solutions that we can all agree upon. And now I turn to our ranking member, Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to apologize. I have a terrible cold. Yesterday I sounded like Chewbacca. Today I sound like a boy going through puberty. My voice continues to crack. So I'm hoping I get to Kathleen Turner tomorrow. But today it's not so sexy. But I want to thank the chairman for convening today's hearing, and I want to thank all of our witnesses for participating in this very important conversation. Last week, Ranking Member Carper and I organized a roundtable discussion to highlight some of our most pressing drinking water and wastewater challenges. We discussed the 90-plus contaminants that EPA currently monitors, including toxins like lead, mercury, and arsenic. We discussed our most vulnerable populations like young children, pregnant mothers, and the elderly, whose exposure to toxins in our water system can alter the trajectory of their lives. We also talked about our nation's water infrastructure, mostly built in the early to mid 20th century with an average lifespan of 75 years, and a growing backlog of need in communities across Illinois and elsewhere. According to the American Water Works Association, replacing failing or outdated drinking water systems and expanding capacity to match population growth will cost at least $1 trillion over the next 25 years. The American Society of Civil Engineers, as my chairman has mentioned, highlights that $271 billion in wastewater infrastructure needs, with 56 million more people connecting to treatment plants by 2032. We're now a full 6 months into the Trump administration, and we still haven't seen any meaningful details about the president's infrastructure plan. Despite a lot of campaign-style rhetoric about the need to invest in our infrastructure, the president's FY 2018 budget provides a net loss, of roughly $144 billion across all modes. The president maintains funding for the state revolving funds, but eliminates USDA's rural development programs and slashes EPA's budget by 31%. Just last night, the White House announced the establishment of a Presidential Advisory Council on Infrastructure, housed in the Department of Commerce, to make recommendations to the President regarding funding, support, and delivery of infrastructure projects across all modes. A report on the Advisory Council's findings is due sometime before December 31 of 2018. If confusion and delay is the President's goal, mission accomplished. Our goal is to enhance safety, protect public health, and create jobs. Personally, I'd like to advance those goals and put people back to work sooner than later. Our infrastructure needs are massive, and our communities face daunting investment challenges to guarantee that what most of us take for granted, clean, safe, healthy water when we turn on the tap. We're here today to better understand the funding and financing challenges and to work to identify bipartisan solutions. Whether it be tax-exempt municipal bonds, public-private partnerships, WIFIA, or state revolving funds, I'm a firm believer in having the right tools for the job. Today's hearing focuses on the efficacy of the tools available to our communities and to identify the gaps where new tools may be needed or existing tools need to be modified. Each provides communities with opportunities to address their water infrastructure needs, and each needs to be thoughtfully considered in their context. Again, I thank the witnesses for their participation in this conversation. I look forward to listening to your testimony, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth, very much. I'm going to introduce Mr. Frazee, who's from Arkansas, and then go to Senator Booker, and he's going to make an introduction also. So, Mr. Frazee moved in 1990 to be closer to his family and was in a situation where he didn't have running water. In 2014, Mr. Frazee's mother contacted my office and we discussed the problem that the family was facing. After talking to Mrs. Frazee, I got her in touch with the Water Systems Council, who were able to drill wells that brought fresh, reliable drinking water directly to the home as well as the homes of the neighbors. As many of you know, this subcommittee hearing was originally supposed to take place on June 20th, but due to a scheduling conflict, we had to cancel at the last minute. Unfortunately for Mr. and Mrs. Frazee, they were already on a plane flying to D.C. By the time the hearing got officially canceled. Luckily for me, and I think luckily for us, I got the opportunity to speak with Mr. Frazee in my office about what his family and community went through and how their lives had changed since receiving running water. Most people who had just gotten reliable and affordable drinking water would forget about the problem and go on with their lives, but not Mr. Frazee. To this day, Mr. Frazee is still getting the word out to everyone who's hauling water in their community. He told me whenever he sees someone hauling water, he stops and tells them about the options that are available for assistance. Mr. Frazee, I would personally like to thank you and your family for everything you've done for the area. I would like to especially thank your wife, Jenny, who's nice enough to travel up to D.C. again to watch you testify. And given your personal experience, these are the kind of stories that we need to get out. There's simply no substitute for it. So thank you very much for being here. Senator Booker.
First of all, I want to thank the chair and ranking member for holding this urgently needed hearing. Most people don't understand the crisis we have in the United States of America when it comes to the quality of our drinking water. The Reuters article recently that talked about over 1,000 jurisdictions in the United States of America that have more lead in their water, more lead in the blood of our children than Flint, Michigan does. We are in crisis in this country, and it's affecting the next generation. It's affecting our economic competitiveness. It's affecting the greatest natural treasure we have, which is not oil or gas. It's the genius of our kids. I'm very blessed to have a guy here who is one of our champions in our state, who's doing extraordinary work in a difficult environment in a city that has had a lot of challenges, in a county that's had a lot of challenges with drinking water. And so, Andy, I want to thank you for coming here. Andy, for the record, is currently the Executive Director and Chief Engineer of the Camden County Municipal Utilities Authority. Before becoming the Executive Director and Chief Engineer of the Camden County Municipal Utilities Authority in 2011, he was the Deputy Executive Director from 1996 to 2011. For over 2 decades, Andy's been just an incredible public servant. He's made a reputation for himself, even up to the northern counties like Essex. He is renowned in his field for the work he has done to rebuild and upgrade Camden County's water treatment plant, implementing really cutting-edge changes, including focusing on green infrastructure solutions. He's utilized cutting-edge green infrastructure solutions in order to help address the other issues, including Camden's combined sewer overflow challenges. Andy and his team were able to make these impressive improvements, and I think this is some good news to all of us, while holding user rates steady for 17 years. Andy currently serves on the board of the National Association of Clean Water Agencies as the chair of the Clean Water Industry of the Future Committee and Environmental Justice and Community Service Committee. He also serves on the New Jersey Environmental Justice Advisory Council. I'm grateful that he's here right now to contribute to this committee, and I always say that Washington would be a better place if more Jersey came down here. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to welcome Josh Ellis, Vice President at the Metropolitan Planning Council in Chicago. Since 1934, the Metropolitan Planning Council has worked to shape a more equitable, sustainable, and prosperous Chicagoland region by developing, promoting, and implementing solutions for sound regional growth. For more than a decade, Josh has been at the forefront of the MPC's urban and regional planning efforts through initiatives like Green Rivers Chicago and Transform Illinois. Josh is a leading voice in the regional conversations about stormwater management and water supply management, as well as advancing meaningful surface and water infrastructure investment policy. I greatly appreciate his willingness to join us today, and I very much look forward to his testimony. Thank you.
Mr. Frazee, you're welcome to go ahead and present your testimony.
Thank you, Senator Boozman. Good morning, Chairman Boozman, ranking members of Duckworth, and members of the subcommittee. I would like to express my and my mother's gratitude for the opportunity to share our story. My name is Mike Frasy, and for most of my life, my family lived without access to safe, reliable drinking water. It is my hope that through telling my story and struggles to secure safe, reliable drinking water, that Congress will put in place policies that will bring affordable drinking water to millions of Americans who live in our nation's rural areas. Providing rural communities with this resource to install wells and well systems may be the single most important form of assistance our government can provide. I live in rural northwest Arkansas, an area of great natural beauty, but where access to basic services like drinking water can be extremely difficult. Life without drinking water can be strenuous and stressful. You are constantly worried about how much water you have and how much water will be consumed in a simple day-to-day activities. In my part of the world, people drive every day thousands of miles a year to haul water from a coin-operated water machine to their homes. And if their water station is broke or there's bad weather conditions, you might have to go several days without water. Hauling water consumes many hours a week, plus tremendous wear and tear on vehicles, and has resulted in a number of deadly accidents. My dad, who is a disabled vet, spent much of his life hauling water to our home. My mother was constantly stressed out about how much water we had. Many people in our area, veterans, the disabled, single parents, are down on their luck, just trying to do right and survive. These folks can't go to a bank, ask for a loan to pay for a well. We do not have the opportunity to tap into city rural water systems. Many of my neighbors struggle to get water. We have single moms taking their children to haul water in buckets. One also worries about the quality of the water being hauled. The water station uses a sign that states, "We cannot ensure the quality of water." How awful is that? In 2014, our prayers for reliable, affordable source of drinking water were answered. My mother contacted Senator Boozman, who listened to our story and took action to help our family and families like ours to get drinking water. Senator Boozman arranged meetings between my mom and the Water System Council that resulted in drilling of wells that brought fresh, reliable drinking water directly into my mother's home and eventually into my home and our neighbors' homes. Wells and well systems are a godsend to rural communities like mine. We were never going to have resources to pay for drinking water treatment facilities or run water lines many miles. However, wells provide to be a very cost-effective alternative for me and my neighbors. The Water Systems Council, through its Water Well Trust, has provided my parents, myself, and families across Arkansas, quality drinking water at a reasonable price through wells. And last year, Senator Bozeman worked with Senator Cardin, thank you, Senator Cardin, to have the Water Supply Cost Savings Act enacted into law. Legislation requiring the USDA and the EPA set up clearinghouses with information on the use of wells, well systems to meet rural drinking water challenges. The Water Systems Council has proven that wells can reduce the cost providing drinking water to many rural communities by over 75%. The 2011 EPA Needs Survey estimates the shortfall of drinking water funding for small communities at $64.5 billion. We've seen in Arkansas wells, they significantly reduce the cost of providing drinking water in many small rural communities, and Congress should do everything it can to promote the use of wells in these rural areas. I know firsthand the importance of safe, affordable drinking water, and wells are a part of that solution. Thanks again to Senator Bozeman, Senator Cardin, for your work to bring the promise of wells and well systems to communities across rural America. I would now like to show you a brief video documenting the role that safe, affordable drinking water played in transforming the lives of my neighbors in Arkansas.
Supply, but the lines were never built. Water Well Trust went out there and is drilling wells for 6 families.
Here in Northwest Arkansas, we're very blessed to have a lot of water. We have springs, abundant groundwater, abundant surface waters, lakes, streams. However, it's unfortunate with all that water that a lot of people don't have access to clean, fresh drinking water. I was contacted to assist with finding the septic systems on these properties so that they could know where to drill the wells.
We've been without water for 17 years. I've been hauling water that long. You have to be real conservative. You have to take shorter baths. You have to make sure the dishwasher is completely full before you run the dishwasher. I have a 450-gallon tank that I place in the back of my pickup truck. We take it 6.2 miles from here, and once it's full, it's 3,200 plus pounds, and I drive back here to my water tank that's in the ground over here and unload. And I do that 3 times a week. This road here has been 12 to 14 inches underwater during rainy season. This road doesn't get serviced by the county during the wintertime. I've had some close calls on this hill because of my water tank. People have crashed and killed themselves. You really have to watch what you're doing here hauling water.
Hauling water is dangerous. The added weight in the back of a truck can shift and cause the driver to lose control of the vehicle. This is especially true when weather conditions such as rain, snow, or ice are present.
I am so grateful that it's not going to happen anymore. What I do is I take the lid off and I insert the hose. 8, 9.
Hauling water is expensive. According to one Water Well Trust client, over the 17 years he has been hauling water, he has used 26,928 quarters, gone through 3 pickup trucks because of the wear and tear from hauling, and has spent over $8,000 on gas for these trips, totaling over $30,000 spent just getting water.
The water falls out of their line into a funnel, and then it becomes my water. So I just turn around and I have time on my hands and I just sit back and wait and just have a seat in the truck.
We've We've been hauling water for 16 years. They said that we would have residential water here in 3 years, but it just never happened.
In many of these rural areas, the expense to run public water supply lines is prohibitive for both the water district and the residents who would then have to absorb the cost. For this Arkansas project, the Water District Number 1 estimated it would cost over $1 million to run lines to these homes.
I've got to haul this tank about once a day, and sometimes that ain't enough. It's something we just desperately needed is water.
I've lived in my home without water for 8 years. My husband has to haul water in a truck. He drives 5 miles each way, and he has to do this every other day. My husband will no longer have to put the tank on and off the truck, fill it, drive 5 miles, worry about, okay, don't wash a load of clothes.
We've lived without safe drinking water for about 13 years.
Well, I believe that there's about 150 families down here that haul their own water. This would be great if we could get it going, and they could benefit from it too.
Very good. Mr. Kricun.
Chairman Bozeman, Ranking Member Duckworth, and members of the subcommittee, thank you very much for the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Andy Kricun, and I'm the Executive Director and Chief Engineer of the Camden County Municipal Utilities Authority in Camden, New Jersey. I also serve on the Board of Directors of the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, NACWA, which is a non-for-profit trade association that represents the interests of public water clean agencies nationwide. I sincerely thank the subcommittee for holding this important hearing on America's funding shortfall for water infrastructure. As all of the senators said in their remarks, this is a very important issue for our country. In our agency, Camden County MUA, we operate an 80 million gallon per day wastewater treatment plant in Camden City that services over 500,000 people in Camden and 36 suburban towns in southern New Jersey. We are deeply committed to our responsibility to protect the public health and the environment, as well as to being responsible stewards of our ratepayers' dollars. Funding our extensive infrastructure is one of our greatest challenges as a utility. All clean water agencies around the country have the same missions, and they are as follows. 1, to protect the public health, both safe drinking water and freedom from sewage overflows and backups. Children shouldn't have to walk through puddles of combined sewage to get to their bus stops, and they shouldn't have lead in their drinking water. To protect our environment, to keep America open for business, because without water infrastructure, there is no opportunity for growth. And also, infrastructure construction and maintenance results in jobs. So there's challenges, but also opportunities. In order to do this, in order to meet our mission of protecting the environment, protecting the public health, we have to reinvest in aging infrastructure. As Senator Duckworth said, our infrastructure is old. In Camden City, our utilities are as old as the late 19th century. So over 100 years, and the average life is only about 70 years, as you said. We also need to comply with Clean Water Act rules and regulations and help to support a high quality of our life in our community. Our goal as a clean water utility is not only to meet our mission of meeting our permit, but also to be an anchor institution in our neighborhoods. And that's an opportunity for clean water utilities that many utilities across the country are stepping up to do. The need for greater investment in our nation's infrastructure has already been discussed today. It's very well known, and I also agree with Senators Bozeman and Duckworth regarding the D-plus grade from the American Society of Civil Engineers. It's a very serious challenge. There's a very significant infrastructure gap right now. In addition, we in New Jersey can speak about climate history. Hurricane Sandy took place in 2012. As a result, billions of gallons of raw sewage went into the waterways of New Jersey. So there's an infrastructure gap as things stand today, even if the climate doesn't worsen. However, as time goes on, this gap will widen because infrastructure is only aging, therefore only getting worse, and there are many who predict that the climate will worsen. So therefore, there's a significant gap today, and that gap will only widen. So there's a lot we have to do. However, on the good news side, there are solutions, and I'll propose 5 solutions that clean water utilities can and want to be part of. And the first is we have to take it on ourselves, increased efficiency for our own utilities. We have to be as efficient as possible. We need to harness the private sector notion of efficiency and then harness that to the public good. So that's one thing. Second, the state revolving fund. It's been so crucial for us in New Jersey. We're very lucky to have a very robust SRF program, New Jersey Environmental Infrastructure Trust, that's helped us with financing. Third would be additional funding, if possible, above and beyond the existing SRF appropriation. Fourth, additional regulatory flexibility for innovation. And then lastly, an affordability program for low-income customers will really be helpful. So those are the 5 things: increased efficiency in ourselves, additional funding, additional regulatory flexibility, and an affordability program. In our own agency, we've been working very hard with regard to efficiency. We implemented an environmental management system and a very aggressive asset management program to improve our efficiency. We also used the state revolving fund to rebuild our entire wastewater treatment plant and add odor control systems to make sure that we were not having an adverse impact on our residential community, which is only 100 yards away. So we did all of those things. We built our entire plant, but through improved efficiency and the state revolving fund, we were able to hold our user fee for 17 years. Our user fee in 1996 was $337 per household per year. Today it's $352, only $15 a year higher in 21 years. So that shows that if we're given the tools, the funding from the state revolving fund, plus our own efficiency, we can do the job and also do it in a way without adversely affecting the rates of our customers, and also making a positive difference for our community as well. This could never have been happened, however, without the judicious use of New Jersey State Revolving Fund. That was really critical. We could not have done it on our own. We couldn't have done it with only SRF. If we weren't inefficient, we would not have been able to do it either. It's the combination of internal efficiency plus the State Revolving Fund program which enabled us to improve our performance and hold our rates. So throughout my role in NACWA as a NACWA board member, I know that our situation is not unique. Clean water utilities across the country rely very heavily on the state revolving fund. It is essential for us to do our mission. We know that the era of grants is past, and the federal grants would always be welcome. The low-interest state revolving fund is very, very helpful. In New Jersey, we're able to get interest rates of less than 1%. So the way this works for us is that if we're making an improvement to our wastewater treatment plant, we're lowering our operation and maintenance costs because new equipment uses lower maintenance costs and lower electricity because newer technology. So we're lowering our O&M costs, but our annual debt service is not so great because of the low interest rates and the 30-year time frame to pay back the loan. So by borrowing the money, we're able to actually have an annual debt service that is lower than the O&M savings from the improvements. And that's how we're able to improve our environmental performance, protect the public health, and hold our rates steady. So with the help of the federal government, with the SRF and the state revolving funds have really been essential to helping us meet our environmental and public service missions. In addition, we're hoping that there will be other opportunities for funding. As you've all mentioned already today, the infrastructure issue is really a crisis, and so more financing and more funding is needed. And again, I think the state revolving fund is a terrific way, and that other utilities can follow the approach that we took to utilize to improve their performance and reduce their costs. We're also very supportive of other opportunities like EPA's Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, the WIFIA program. Tax-exempt municipal bonds are important. Leveraging private investment where appropriate through public-private partnerships. We utilized a public-private partnership to build a solar panel system array that enabled us to reduce our annual electricity costs by $350,000 per year, but also lower our carbon footprint significantly. It provides 10% of our plant's electricity. We were able to do that at no cost. The solar panels were paid for by the private investor, and we pay 4.8 cents per kilowatt hour, whereas before we were paying 12 cents. So it's a win for the ratepayer. It's more resiliency because we have the solar panels instead of relying on the electricity, public electricity, and also it reduces our carbon footprint. So public-private partnerships really can be a win-win where larger utilities can share resources and financing capabilities with the private sector, and also even within our own sector. NACWA, the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, is working on a peer-to-peer initiative in which larger utilities with greater resources can assist utilities with lower resources and work together in a peer-to-peer effort. So we want to not only have efficiency within our own utilities individually, but also within our sector to try to leverage as much as possible our own resources. In fact, the utility at Chicago is really a great leader in that peer-to-peer effort, Senator Duckworth.
And Andy, before the Senator or Chairman interrupts you, I don't want you to be interrupted by a non-New Jerseyan. So you might want to wrap up your testimony.
Oh, thank you, Senator Booker. Thank you. In closing, I want to thank the subcommittee and Congress for holding this important hearing. Our clean water industry must close our infrastructure gap for the sake of our children and future generations. We can do this work. We can do this work, but we do need some help. I'd like to thank you very much for holding the hearing and for the opportunity to speak before you, and look forward to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kricun. So that people know what's going on here, Senator Bozeman had to do kind of an emergency thing at the Appropriations Committee. He'll be right back. And so we'll see people rotating. Our staffs are here. We appreciate your testimony very much. Mr. Ellis.
Thanks for having me today. I am the Vice President of the Metropolitan Planning Council, which since 1934 has been working on urban and regional development issues in the greater Chicago region. The greater Chicago region is certainly the city of Chicago, but also 7 other counties and a total of about 280 independent municipalities. The state of Illinois leads the nation in units of government. We have about 8,000 in the state. We're not real proud to lead the nation in that one, but we have a lot. Within those municipalities in northeastern Illinois, we actually have about 400 independent water utilities. And so you can imagine the issues that Andy and Mike describing playing out in 400 different communities, some of very different demographics, very different income and economic status. And that's at the heart of several of the issues that I'm going to talk about today. So as Senator Boozman pointed out, we have lots of tools in the toolbox for water infrastructure financing. A lot of them work very well. And like any tool, if you use the wrong tool at the wrong time, you're trying to put a screw in with a tape measure, it doesn't work very well, right? And the reality is, instead of focusing on innovative financing, we need to figure out effective financing first to make sure that these communities are getting the tools that they need. We did a survey, statewide survey several years ago of water utilities and their experience using the SRF. And actually 30% of the respondents told us they had never heard of the SRF. So that could be problem one. Now, those survey responses were also very short to read. But they didn't know that the program existed. And so just awareness that the tools even exist, particularly in lower income suburban communities as well as rural communities, is a big issue. So there are plenty of improvements we can make to existing tools. But there's a huge divergence between communities, not just in the suburbs of Chicago, but throughout the United States, in practices on rate setting, how communities deal with affordability issues, financial management, accounting, asset management. Communities like Chicago, with the staff capacity and technical know-how to employ best practices, largely are doing so, right? In the city of Chicago right now, we are replacing water mains that were installed when President Roosevelt was in office. That's Theodore Roosevelt, and I have sections of wooden pipe in my office that have been taken out of the ground in the last couple of years. Served us well, those trees did. Many other communities, if they don't have the capacity and technical know-how to use programs like SRF, aren't doing these sort of things, and they're falling further and further behind. It's not uncommon in our region for communities to lose 25, 30, 40% of their water through leaks in their pipe system. And if you, every time you went home from the grocery store, 40% of your groceries blew out the window. If every time Mike went to fill up a tank of water, 40% of the water poured out on the way home, you would realize you had a problem. But that's common in our region of communities losing tremendous amounts of water out of leaky pipes. A lot of communities have no dedicated revenue stream for stormwater management. In addition to water supply issues, a lot of communities fail to update their rates on any sort of regular schedule, so they fall further and further behind. The federal government can do many things, whether through incentives built into SRF scoring, through grants made available through some of the SRF set-aside programs, even through the basic requirements of the program to encourage full cost pricing, encourage asset management plans, consistency in reporting and budgeting. In my estimation, the SRF works pretty well. It's just that a lot of communities don't have access to it. Communities struggle to do some of the pre-engineering planning that you have to do in order to get a loan. You have to submit your infrastructure plan, your engineering plan. And if you don't have the resources to do that and you can't get reimbursed for it, then you can't do some of that preliminary work that you need to do in order to apply for the program. I'm fully cognizant of the need for differences from states to states. I've lived in 5 different states in this country, and I get the differences between them. But there are best practices being played out in many different states, and yet we haven't yet figured out how to put them all together in one package in any one state. And it may be time for some greater consistency between state-to-state use of the SRF programs now that we've figured out some things that work in these different states. At the heart of it, though, with the SRF and the experience that we saw in the survey that went out statewide is that the SRF program, at least in Illinois, is very slow and cumbersome to use, very different than trying to go for a bond or even to a private bank for a loan. Application times are very long. It can screw up construction schedules. If you're a low-income community and you have to retain a private engineering consultant for 18, 24 months over multiple construction schedules because you're not getting a response from the state on the SRF, that drives up costs and can delay your projects. This is not just an Illinois issue. However, for all the things that we could do just to make the funding tools work better and have better access to them, I don't think the money is necessarily the fix to all of these things. So an infusion of funding for cities like Chicago, Oklahoma City, Little Rock, some of these bigger places that have the capacity to take that money in and use it for infrastructure projects makes a lot of sense. The point I mentioned about having 400 independent water utilities, some of which are very small, many of those communities do not have the technical capacity, the staffing or whatever, to be able to receive federal funding, to be able to apply for it. And the issue there is governments and the fragmentation of the system, right? We have a handful of water sources in northeastern Illinois, Lake Michigan, groundwater, river water, and yet we have 400 utilities managing these different systems, right? And many areas of the country are just like this. When every municipality has its own utility and that utility operates essentially as the public works department, a lot of the decisions that get made are wrapped up in the other political decisions that municipality has to make. And so if you're looking at adjusting water rates, but also providing fire service and schooling and things, you have to make these decisions with all of these other calculations in mind. And as a result, hard choices like rate increases get delayed, infrastructure projects get delayed, and you end up having 25-40% of your water dripping out your pipes. So the fragmentation compounds underlying environmental, economic, and equity issues, right? If a community, like we have in many of our inner ring suburbs across the country, has lost population, lost 10,000 people over the last 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, when people move to the suburbs, they don't take pipes and pumps with them when they exit town, right? And so you have a smaller community, often with a smaller industrial base, paying for the same infrastructure system, the same amount of pipes, the same amount of pumps. And you're having to squeeze water from a stone here to even pay for it. Rates increase. Often rates will have to increase to pay for the system while incomes are decreasing. We have communities in Illinois, a place like Dixmoor is a small suburban community in the south side. Median household income for the year is about $13,000. So Dixmoor clearly has some other problems going on too. They pay $12.50 per 1,000 gallons of water, which is what a family of four would consume in about 3 days. Lake Forest, which is where Michael Jordan used to live, median household income's closer to $80,000. They pay $5 per 1,000 gallons.
Mr. Ellis, we'll ask you to try to wrap up.
Yep, absolutely. So there are these disparities that are occurring here, and a lot of it is the size and the scale of these water utilities. So as we think about new funding, the funding is great, but getting to these structural issues of encouraging through different ways these utilities to start to consider consolidation, to start to consider service sharing so we can get to some bigger economies of scale, to think differently about how the money goes out so that we're not just putting into the ground and fixing some pipes in a handful of communities, but we're solving some of these underlying fundamental issues, and I'm happy to talk more about it in the Q&A section. Thanks again.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Ellis.
Sure
we'll
thing.
now begin 5-minute rounds of questioning, starting with Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Senator Inhofe. Mr. Ellis, I'm going to give you a little bit more time to speak, but I just want to say that we indeed have come a long way, and I served on the House Oversight Committee during the Flint water crisis. And really there, the issue was that they switched their water source to using the Flint River, where the water was a different composition. And I remember the first time I took a Chicago architectural boat tour. It's a wonderful tour. If you're ever in Chicago, take it. It's run by the Architectural Society, and it goes down the Chicago River. But they very proudly said to me on that boat tour about 25 years ago, we're really proud. This river used to be labeled toxic. We just polluted it now. And that's the source of water for many communities. And that was an improvement. And I thought, oh, my goodness. So, Mr. Ellis, many of us would agree that when addressing our infrastructure needs, we must do our best to tackle our most pressing challenges, full steam ahead. There's also something to be said about low-hanging fruit. To me, compiling an inventory of SRF best practices and establishing meaningful asset management policies and fiscal sustainability plans are common sense approaches to improving critical relationship between taxpayers and state decision makers in making the case for infrastructure investments. Hardworking families in Illinois want to know that before a single dollar of their money is spent, that everything is being done to maximize the effectiveness of those dollars. And I just want to follow up on what you were just talking about. What else can we do to improve the relationship between decision makers and taxpayers as it relates to funding opportunities?
Sure. So one, just increasing awareness and through all communication channels about the tools that are out there, right? With all of these municipalities that we have, I know one mayor in the suburban area who actually has a water infrastructure background, right? A lot of folks come into office running at the municipal level don't have a background in these sorts of things and need to learn on the job, which is a tough way to do it if you have a massive water infrastructure system. So increasing awareness of the tools that are even out there, how they can be used is step one. One of the other issues is that this is not water infrastructures until we get to a crisis like we see in Flint. It's not something that a whole lot of the average citizens pay a whole lot of attention to, right? If they see rate increases being proposed, if they see it, maybe then they pay attention. But we don't have, while we have environmental commissions at the local level and things like that, you don't have too many public works commissions of citizens participating in some of the decision making. That seems like a best practice that also could be encouraged through the SRF, just so that people are paying more attention to it. And the other, I think, is starting to find ways to decouple local political decisions from rate setting and somehow make it more comfortable for people to adjust water rates on a more frequent basis so that they can keep up with infrastructure backloads, so that you're not getting a 30-40% rate increase every 10 years, but you're seeing more modest increases or in some cases decreases on a more regular basis so that it's not so inflammatory when this big rate deal happens. Might improve trust, might improve the ability to get things done. A lot of it's just communication because this is frankly not something not an issue that we talk about very much.
So given that and touching on what you just said about many municipal leaders, especially mayors, come in without this water background, many small communities in Illinois and elsewhere may not have that capacity, expertise, or resources to deal with the technical challenges and financing challenges associated with reliably providing good, clean drinking water and water services. What suggestions do you have to address this resource issue, whether it's technical expertise or even just resources to try to apply for an SRF?
Sure. So within the SRF program, there are something called set-aside programs that each state is allowed to use. They can take some of the capitalization money that goes in every year and use it for different kinds of grants. Some states use those to fund grants specifically for looking at things like consolidation. Some use them for just sort of technical assistance and staff building at the local level. The states are using these set-asides in very different ways. And the reality is in one state there might be a program to encourage consolidation, and another there might not be. So getting some greater consistency across the SRF programs might be time to do that. I think the point I was trying to make about starting to consider consolidation and lumping some of these utilities together so that they can do things at a larger economy of scale, afford larger infrastructure projects, maybe get better bonding ratings, finding ways to incentivize people to just think differently about the governance structure of their water utility would be very helpful too. And that's not necessarily even a rural or urban thing. I mean, that could apply throughout the spectrum. So.
Thank you, Mr. Kricun. I just have 10 seconds left. Do you want to add anything to that in your experience, especially with SRF?
Yes. One thing I would say is that...
Use your mic, please.
I'm sorry, sir. Sorry, Senator. A peer-to-peer initiative is really important. There are clean water utilities which have experience and are willing to share it with other utilities. So lining up utilities that are willing to share the information with utilities that need resources and information would really be important. EPA and NACWA are working on a peer-to-peer program to try to connect people with resources with those that need it. And I think that would really be of great help to see that advance.
Thank you very much, Senator Duckworth. Well, let me ask you a question. You seem to spend a lot of time talking about the SRF program, Mr. Ellis. What do you think we could do from here that could change this program to make it work more efficiently? Because you've all agreed that there are some obstacles that are out there. Maybe we can overcome those. Any thoughts about that?
Sure. One of the big differences between states, and you actually heard Andy mention it, I think, some states have decoupled the management of the SRF program from whoever their state regulatory agency is, right? And so the loan program is managed by someone more like each state has a different one, but it's more like a finance authority, someone who is in the business of issuing loans and is able to operate faster, further, whatever. Some states still have the SRF program in their equivalent of the EPA And that, in my estimation, can slow things down, right? Having professional financial management staff working on these loan programs and probably other loan programs that are not related to water infrastructure is one of the things that can speed things up. And again, establishing some best practices and encouraging states to look at transitioning the program over to being what it should be, which is a loan program first and foremost, would be one of the ways that you could start to encourage some greater speed and get these loan programs to function more like going to the bank to get a loan for a project at your house, right? Yeah. Faster review times, faster times to get the money out the door would be huge for some of these communities, again, because if you're applying for a loan and you have to retain engineering consultants and whatever, the costs build up and you're just paying for someone to wait while the other folks review application times, right? So things like that. And again, the best practices are known in state revolving loan fund, but maybe Maryland's got a couple and South Dakota's got a couple and Texas has a couple, and we haven't yet put it together into a perfect package where everyone is more or less doing things that are recognized as best practices.
Well, the different states that are represented here, and in my state of Oklahoma, it's not unlike Mr. Frazee, the state of Arkansas. Our big problem has always been, way back when I was in the state legislature, before most of you guys were born, at that time, the big problem was transferring water from one part of the state to the other part of the state. The eastern part of the state has plenty of water. The western part of the state has no water. And in fact, that's why so we have, and it happens, I've lived with this problem for a long time because my wife and I have been married 57 years, and her father was chairman of the Water Resources Board. So we've addressed these problems for a long period of time. Mr. Frazee, I was fascinated. I'm very familiar with your area there. Of course, I'm in eastern Oklahoma. I butt right up against, pretty close to your home area.
Yes.
And I was fascinated by the fact that you took the time to go out and locate people and help them because you needed help at one time. You were fortunate in having Senator Bozeman come and be of assistance to you. You want to give us any live examples of what you have been able to do, just one man out helping others, neighbors, resolve these problems?
Anytime I see somebody, hauling water, I take my time to stop, talk to them, explain my story, give them some insight, what they need to do, how they need to speak with Senator Bozeman and get the word out. But I think pushing this Saving Act forward, and getting the financing to get people help, get them running.
So you're finding most of the people you talk to, I'm familiar with Rogers. Rogers is a major city.
Yeah, I know.
But it doesn't take more than 5 minutes outside of Rogers to be out in some pretty remote areas.
Yeah.
And those are the people that have problems. I was shocked to find out that you did not have a water system when you were within how many miles of Rogers?
We're probably 5 minutes from downtown Rogers.
Yeah.
And what's ridiculous is I drive past a water treatment plant every day going into town to go to work, to shop, whatever. And on that sign where they treat the water, they're shipping it to Washington County, which is a county south of us that has no impact on our little community there.
Yeah. And yet you live in a part of the state of Arkansas that just has an abundance of water. I
live right by Beaver Lake.
Yeah.
There's over 1,200 miles of shorefront.
Yeah, I know. I'm very, very familiar with that.
Yeah.
All right, Senator Booker.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Frazee, I want to thank you. Really, your story is heroic, and you're showing, frankly, what it means to be an American, what it means to be a citizen, to be there for each other. And I'm really moved by that. And this is issues that, folks are not just in communities like Arkansas, but in many parts of this country, including in my state of New Jersey. But I know that we're all in this fight together. And as much as I'm making jokes about being a Jerseyan, this is the United States of America. And so I recently decided to go outside of our state to try to draw attention to some of these urgent crises, because according to the census, we have about 500,000 homes around this country that lack access to hot and cold running water. Most people don't even realize that. They don't have water running into a bathtub or a shower or a working flushing toilet. This is including 11,000 homes in New Jersey. But again, this is a national problem that we're all in together. And the federal government, we formed this government for the common defense, for the common security. For us to be a developed nation and not have this is astonishing to me. And so I went a few weekends ago to rural Alabama and to visit low-income African-American communities. And I found out that less than half the population is connected to a municipal water system. Famous counties like Lowndes County, where marchers that were going across the Edmonds Pettus Bridge marched through. It was stunning to me that many of the families there had no septic systems, that had no sewage systems, and they had septic systems that failed because of the type of soil that they had. And so they had just had raw sewage. I was stunned to see just raw sewage running behind people's homes. And so in addition to detaining the water supply and harming the local environment, what most people don't know, and I found this out when I sat down with folks to talk about, I'm on this ranking member of the subcommittee on Africa, to talk about neglected tropical diseases. And the scientist told me, did you know that we still have these diseases in the United States of America? And I was like, no, that can't be. And so you see parasites that we think of in developing nations, such as hookworm, in the United States in poor communities. It's stunning to me because of our lack of water infrastructure. And so this is an outrageous environmental injustice that no child should be growing up in a situation disproportionately affecting poor communities. And I saw in Alabama so many of these historically African-American communities. So I just, Mike, your advocacy is profoundly important, and I just want to thank you. It's important to your community, but it's really what you're doing is bringing light to a problem that's critically important to our nation as a whole. Mr. Kricun, you are, Andy, your friend, and I just want your comment on something that we almost got to the finish line. Left because I was going to heap praise upon him for being such a good partner of mine on so many issues. Many people confuse us because we look so much alike in the Senate. Because I am the Robin to his Batman, and so last year with his help I was able to get the Water Infrastructure Investment Trust Fund bill and a Water Utility Workforce Development Program into the Senate-passed WRDA bill. It was something that I was very proud of and really was done thanks to the leadership of Senator Inhofe and some of my Republican partners. It was a strong bipartisan support, but unfortunately those provisions were stripped out of the final bill by House Republicans. As I continue to work with my colleagues to move these important programs across the finish line, I just was wondering if you could describe very briefly how the Trust Fund Initiative and the Workforce Development Programs could have helped Camden County, but frankly could have helped our country.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I mean, there's no doubt that, first of all, in our industry, they call it silver tsunami. People are ready to retire and leave the industry. People in our utility, for example, 50 to 60% are eligible for retirement within 2 to 3 years. We need to look for replacements. And that's the case all across the country with utilities as baby boomers retire. And most of our wastewater treatment plants are in economic distressed communities. That's why the treatment plant was put there, or the plant was put there, it became that way. No one wants to live next to the wastewater treatment plant. But yet we often have to look beyond our communities, our neighboring communities, to find replacement workers because they don't have the skills or the training. And so if we could develop a workforce training program, that would be a tremendous opportunity to actually have people who live in our neighborhoods, work at our water treatment plants, be the replacement workers, and also bring up their neighborhoods and communities. I think it's a tremendous opportunity, and that's urban or rural. I think it's a tremendous opportunity because water treatment jobs, wastewater, drinking water treatment jobs are good, solid jobs, and there's a real scarcity of replacement workers, and yet we're often in communities where people need jobs the most. And the infrastructure trust program is absolutely necessary as well. Our D+ grade isn't acceptable. It's only going to get worse with time. So I strongly support your efforts and the bipartisan efforts, and hope that you're successful this time, Senator.
Thank you.
One last thing I wanted to say with regard to the poor communities and across the country, rural and urban, it really is, you're absolutely right, and that's why this peer-to-peer effort is really important. There are utilities that are willing to share their knowledge and resources. What we need, the help we need, is to look and identify the small towns or cities that lack capacity so that we can be match-made with them and assist them. So that's help that we could really use from the federal government.
No, I appreciate that. And Chairman, this is one of those perfect examples why we in the United States of America, whether you live in a rural community, urban community, we have a common pain and we must join in a common purpose. This is the United States of America. This is a shame on our nation that we have children growing up in these rural and urban poor communities that have such unconscionable realities. So I'm thankful again for the bipartisan work on this, on rectifying this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Booker. As you notice, once again, the chair has moved again, once again, and Senator Inhofe has had to leave to go to another committee. Senator Boozman should be back shortly. I have to agree that Senator Booker is correct. He and Senator Inhofe look an awfully lot alike, with the exception that Senator Inhofe's age shows a little bit more occasionally. But we noticed the likeness there. I'm from South Dakota, and we've got the same challenge as everybody else does when it comes to water and water systems. We've got 9 separate Native American tribes on reservations there. Water quality is critical there, and yet they're in rural areas, and we still struggle to provide water, high-quality water there. And we've got a couple of projects. We call them rural water systems. Sounds a lot like what you've been looking at in Arkansas in terms of well water and so forth. But in our particular case, we've got the Missouri River, which runs right down through the center of the state with great high-quality water, and we've got a very efficient way of being able to deliver quality water if we can get it to locations. So I agree, it's very, very important. We've seen the ability of states, when they have the resources, to coordinate with rural water systems and provide individuals in local areas who really want to improve the quality of life the opportunity to do so. You know, we're sitting right now at a time in which we've got very low interest rates, long-term low interest rates, and it's probably a real opportunity to look at the ability to bring assets together and extend in a long-term payback period the opportunity to invest in infrastructure. And I most certainly think that rural water systems, along with and the rehabilitation of existing municipal water systems, this is a real opportunity to look at it. I'm just, and in thinking back, Mr. Frazee, in terms of the story that you've told, I'm just going to begin this by saying when I first met my wife, Jean, she lived in a rural area near Lake Preston, South Dakota, and they hauled water at that time. And they'd haul it in once a week into a cistern and back out again. And what that also meant, though, was the quality of the water was not the best. It meant that everything was stained, the pipes would fill up, they'd get clogged and everything else. And I remember her dad, who is now in his early 90s, was the first president of a rural water system there, and they coordinated in that group to put together over a period of years a rural water system called Kingbrook, which is still in existence today and growing rapidly. They could not have done it if there was not an organization of local people willing to put some money in, some revenue in, lay out the plans, but then also to go to local lenders to begin with to borrow some money, and then to go back in through federal resources and state resources in order to borrow long-term to improve the quality of life. What it meant was you could actually have pipes that worked. What it meant was that you had high-quality drinking water. It meant that you had livestock that had high-quality water. And it also meant you could have a thing like a dishwasher in your house besides the husband after dinner. It meant that dishwashers would actually work with the quality of the water. So I think it's really important that we talk about the need for this type of infrastructure as being on the top of all this, right along with highways, roads, and bridges. I'm just curious. I'd really like to know, and Mr. Frazee, in terms of how they help to finance for your part of Arkansas, was it a case to where they were able to come in and help with assistance? And what were the folks that were the recipients of like the water systems that you had? Did they then have a monthly water bill that they'd pay as well at that stage of the game? Is that the way it kind of worked?
Yes, Senator Rounds, what they did, they funded all the projects. You have to pay back. Veterans were discounted, you know what I mean? Me, I just have a payment like everybody else, you know what I mean? Very minimal, no interest, and it's great.
Was it organized through the state or through a local district? Do you know?
It was I want to say it was organized through the Waterwell Trust.
Okay.
They found all the lending, or supported all the lending.
Thank you. Mr. Kricun?
Yes, Senator.
Just curious, with regard to the financing and so forth that you've used in the past, can you share a little bit about whether or not, like in this particular case, I like the idea of the states really being in charge of the operations, and then if we need the financial backing and so forth, we look at the federal level. But I like the idea of block grants. I like the idea of having access to guaranteed loans and so forth, but revenue bonds and so forth. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of financing you guys have seen and the success that you've had and what the challenges were?
Yes, thank you, Senator Rounds. So we basically were able to optimize our entire wastewater treatment plant and install new equipment expressly through the state revolving fund in New Jersey, the New Jersey Environmental Infrastructure Trust. Because the operation and maintenance cost of the new equipment was lower than the old equipment, because less maintenance because it's newer, and also lower electricity costs because there's more innovative, more newer generation. Our operation and maintenance cost savings were greater than the annual debt service costs. So the infrastructure trust, the SRF, was the difference between a go and a no-go. So instead of interest rates at 5 or 6%, we were less than 1%. So our annual debt service costs were lower than the O&M savings. As a result, we built our entire wastewater treatment plant, plus helped the city of Camden's combined sewer system too. Camden's one of the poorer cities in the nation, while holding our rate. Our rate was $337 in 1996. $352 today in 2017, but mainly through some internal efficiency, but mainly through the SRF. So the state revolving fund, the grants were great, but the state revolving fund program really is a very successful and helpful way to help us with our mission.
I couldn't agree more, and I think it's a very important tool for us to make sure is maintained into the future. I thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
My time has expired. Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here. I was struck by Mr. Ellis's comment that he can remember wooden piping coming out of the ground. I represent Rhode Island, and I have the same memories from my days doing water utility rate cases. It's still not so great. Here's a piece of pipe that came out of the Kingston Water District. The manager, Henry Meyer, sent me that to remind me of what was going on. That pipe goes back to about the 20s, and as you can see, it's filled in pretty good. But he also sent, this is from old Kingston Village, this piece of pipe comes from the Kingstown Road, and as you can see from the side, this is plastic piping. This is much more recent, but check it out end on. Look at the size of the remaining aperture in that pipe. So these pieces of pipe are kind of touchable evidence of the problems that we have and the scope of the possible infrastructure solution that we could have. So I wanted to flag that particular situation. I also wanted to flag another situation that is more a problem in our coastal states than in other states, and that is that, let me show you what this is. This is a map of Rhode Island. It's been this is the northern part of Rhode Island in upper Narragansett Bay. Our capital city, Providence, is right here. This is Warwick Neck. This is Bristol and Warren. And what we have here is the latest information from our Coastal Resources Management Council about sea level rise happening along our coasts. And here is the existing bay. Light blue is actually land now. Right now, that's land. But what we're looking at in the light blue is all these areas are expected to be flooded and underwater by 2100 if we don't get ahead of what's happening with sea level rise. The state of Rhode Island turns into a Rhode Island archipelago. Warwick Neck becomes Warwick Neck Island. Warren and Bristol becomes Warren and Bristol Island, and on you go. And behind all of this blue of flooded land, there will be a zone of potential storm flood zones and velocity zones that interfere with property ownership there as well. So we are looking at a potential economic catastrophe if we don't get ahead of this. And the point for the purpose of this hearing is that right about here, The town of Warren has its sewage treatment facility. If you live near the coast, if you're building sewage treatment facilities, you're building them right along the coastline because you want that gravity assist bringing the water and the sewage down to the treatment plant. So when you start to look at flooding exposure like this, you're starting to look at significant replacement requirements or hardening and protection requirements for our infrastructure. And we're not even really talking about that. I know we're not even talking about that because sea level rise is driven by climate change, and we're not allowed to talk about climate change here in the Congress in any effective or meaningful way. But this is coming. And the infrastructure along these coastal areas needs to be a part of our conversation. If Mr. Pronounce it Cricket? Or Mr. Ellis would like to comment on either of those, we've got about a minute of time for you to respond, either to my good old, nearly filled-in pipes or to the coastal predicament for water infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Senator. I'll try to reply to both. With regard to the infrastructure issue, as you know, the ASC has a D+ grade for water, wastewater infrastructure, a D grade for water infrastructure. And here's the thing. An emergency repair after a failure costs 5 to 7 times more than a planned replacement. So it's not as though you can make the pipe last longer. Once it fails, it'll fail, but it'll be much more costly, not to mention the damage to people and the risk to people if it happens in an emergency unplanned.
So if you had a responsible program, you could get 5 times as much done rather than waiting around for it to fail.
Thank you, Senator. That's exactly right. With regard to the coastal issue, I mean, in New Jersey, we speak of climate history. In 2012, we were already, our treatment plants on the coast were already inundated, billions of gallons of raw sewage into the river, the Atlantic Ocean and Pacific River, and that's how the climate was 5 years ago. Even if it doesn't worsen, there's a big infrastructure gap right now that we have to meet. So what we're trying to do is green infrastructure to capture stormwater, green energy to improve our resiliency against power outages, and also hardening of our planet itself to make us less vulnerable to the climate as it is. I know climate change is controversial, and I do believe that the climate will worsen.
It's not really controversial. It's just politically controversial.
But even if it doesn't worsen, we have a gap right now that we should be working to correct. And if we're correcting that now, then we can also look at projections like our Delaware River is supposed to rise by 18 inches in the next 30 years. So we should be looking for catching up the gap right now, but then also looking for projections ahead to be safe and protect us for the future.
Thank you. My time has expired, so I suppose I should leave it there.
Well, thank you, Senator Whitehouse. And I'll turn this back over to Senator Bozeman, but I would ask one moment of privilege, and that is with Senator Whitehouse, and he has been a champion for the issues surrounding the changes that are occurring in Rhode Island and around Rhode Island. And I would suggest that if there is one area of agreement among everyone, whether or not we think that the current plans for how we slow down changes in the climate, the one thing we recognize is that these changes are occurring. And I think that brings about a very important discussion point, which is how do we go about addressing the needs which he has so continuously and eloquently spoke in terms of what it does to his state in particular, along with a lot of other places along the coast. And I think that's an area of agreement that we will find among all of us.
Thank you, sir. I look forward to exploring that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Senator Bozeman, you're up and chairing.
Thank you, and thank you for sitting in. I apologize. I'm in a situation where, we desperately wanted to get this hearing done, and then we had to reschedule, and then all of a sudden they decided to have a vote on the Appropriations Committee. So I've been down having to vote on the Agriculture and then Energy and Water. And there's not very many things that I have to do, but those are things that you simply have to do. So, in fact, the reason that we've had mixed attendance on both sides is that there's a commerce, hearing going on as we speak, and then also a number of people on this committee are also on the Appropriations Committee. So, it is what it is, but we do appreciate you bringing here. I just have a couple questions, really, of you, Mike. In your testimony, you discussed the hardships of having to haul water and check water quality every day. I think the film was excellent, that really summed up. Tell us a little bit how that has made your life a little easier on a day-to-day basis.
It gives me a lot of time to spend with my family, free time to do other things other than having to worry about haul water. it's freed up a bunch of time, and I can't thank you enough or the Waterwell Trust for helping my area out.
And again, just in final follow up to that, you were able to get help in the sense, finding out who to contact. How do we do a better job? What would you suggest as far as outreach so that other people in the situation that you were in, how do we make it easier for them to know that there is help available?
I think the Savings Act needs to be pushed by the USDA and the EPA, and the word needs to be out, and we need to get the financing to help out areas like the area that I live in. That there's no funding there, and we're kind of looked past.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Now we'll turn to Senator Cardin, who has been a great champion on the water issues. He and I had the opportunity to serve as I was his ranking member a couple Congresses ago, and he's just done a tremendous job in this particular area.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to come by and compliment your leadership on chairmanship of this subcommittee. One of the most productive sessions in Congress is when the two of us on this subcommittee work together, and I really do appreciate your commitment to water infrastructure. My staff has told me that most of the points that I wanted to get a response from witnesses have already been made. Thank you. Our chairman has taken the leadership on additional tools to modernize our water infrastructure. In Maryland, I could tell you about major water main breaks every day. I could tell you about when River Road in Montgomery County was a river, and people had to be rescued through helicopters. I can tell you about the Washington Beltway being closed as a result of water main breaks. I can talk to you about Dundalk, Maryland, having to be evacuated because of a water main break. Downtown Baltimore having to have detours because of water main breaks. That's all since I've been in the Senate. So this has been we have major problems. I could also tell you about one day, Mr. Chairman, finding out from the Public Works in Baltimore that they discovered a pipe that was still being used that was made out of wood. So we got some really old systems in Maryland that need a tremendous attention. And of course, one of the great challenges for water infrastructure is that it's hidden until there's a break. And of course, we're wasting so much water every day, so much energy every day, and there are public health risks, no question about safe drinking water and the manner in which we deal with this. So, yes, we have existing tools. We have municipal financing. We have tax-exempt bonds. We have the revolving funds. We have the initiative that the chairman has taken the leadership on for additional ways that we can deal with the planning. All these are important programs. We've also joined together as a sense of Congress to try to increase the amount of monies that are made available under these tools, which is we recognize the budgets are tough, but we also recognize there's a bipartisan desire to increase the amount of money we put into infrastructure in this country, including water infrastructure. So all those are extremely positive signs, and I just really wanted to come by to tell you we're going to look for every creative way we can to give you additional opportunities and tools in order to deal with it. And the last point I would make, this also involves another one of my passions, which is the Chesapeake Bay and our environment, because as we deal with water infrastructure, how we deal with a lot of the issues, it also involves the environment. So there's many reasons why we need to look for creative ways, and there are several initiatives, none of which are partisan, and we really need to continue to make that progress. The Water Resources Development Act last year made significant progress in that regard. A lot of the bills that members of this committee worked on were incorporated in the final word of bill. Some were pulled out in the House. And I thank our chairman because we're working together to try to get those provisions now moving in this Congress that were not able to get done in the last Congress that deal with water infrastructure. So thank the witnesses and let you know that this is an extremely high priority for all of us on this committee. And it's great to be on this committee for many reasons, but one of the principal reasons is that we have some incredible members that I work with, including the chairman and the ranking member of the subcommittee, and I thank them both for their leadership on this issue.
Thank you so much, and we do appreciate your leadership. And as you point out, we really do have a good committee that's working in a very bipartisan way to sort these things out. You know, in the road that Mike lives on, that area, you know, it's Republicans, it's Democrats, and who cares? You know, it's just the idea of providing the service that people desperately need.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out my reasons for popping in and out is that Senate Foreign Relations Committee, where I am ranking, is holding hearings on important nominations, and I just really wanted to come by, and I apologize for not being here for the testimony.
And I appreciate you pointing that out. I've not been here most of the time either because of appropriations. So I'm told that Senator Gillibrand is on the way, and so we'll wait just a few minutes for her. But do you all have any comments that?
I'd like to respond to one of the questions that Senator Whitehouse mentioned when he held up his
Sure.
prop of the full pipe. So one thing to just note is that when those pipes fill up with sediment or whatever, I mean, you lose the original design capacity of that pipe. And so as we think about infrastructure, we're often talking about building new things, but just the basic maintenance of going in and cleaning out the pipes is also something a lot of communities can't afford, aren't doing, whatever, and so they're losing design capacity, and the solution is actually just to repair the existing system, right? That same phenomenon, though, is also occurring on private property, and a lot of what we've talked about today is public infrastructure, with the exception of Mike's situation in needing to build wells for private homes. In an urban environment, the biggest issue on private properties is the lateral lines that connect your home to the pipeline, right? And it's actually in those lines where we have lots of older pipes, either full like that or pipes with lead in them from bygone days when we used to do that. And you've got about 30 feet for every private property out there, and who knows what's going on in some of these homes, whether that pipe is cracked, whether lead is leaching out of that private pipe. Now, there have been a couple communities, I can think of Madison, Wisconsin, and Galesburg, Illinois, that have used the SRF program to put money into the hands of private property owners to take those pipes out. And that project of tearing up your lawn, taking out that old pipe, putting in a new pipe, can be $20,000, $30,000 per home. In a low-income community, you can't really ask a homeowner to do that if they probably don't have the money, and if they are, they're saving it up for something else. So finding a way to use the SRF to tackle projects on private property is something we're only really starting to grapple with, whether that's well installation or fixing these lateral line issues going into the house, and then issues coming back out of cracks in the sewage and stormwater pipe where you have stuff leaching out into lawns and things like that. Figuring out how to use these public resources or public-private partnerships to work on private properties is, I think, one of our next big challenges, because a lot of the infrastructure that's out there is not publicly owned. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Mr. Kricun.
Thank you, Senator. As we've discussed, our infrastructure needs to be improved in order to protect the public health and the environment for safe drinking water and to protect against combined sewage overflows and flooding. But doing so will not only be necessary to protect the public health and the environment, but also result in job creation, not only for the construction, but also for the maintenance of the new system. So I think it's definitely a win-win. I also agree with what Josh said about the efficacy of the maintenance of the existing collection systems. We did a study where by cleaning the pipes out on a regular basis, we improved their collection capacity, reduced flooding by 30 to 35%. That's a huge win. But the problem is that economic distressed communities, whether it be urban or rural, sometimes lack that capacity. So that's why I think, in addition to public-private partnerships, public-public partnerships where utilities assist each other with resources would really be helpful in getting the most out of our industry and of our infrastructure.
Very good.
Thank you.
Senator Gillibrand, thank you so much for, on a very, very busy day, I've had to miss a good part of the hearing because of other committee duties. I know you're in the same situation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Ranking Member. Mr. Kricun, how do you say your name? Kricun. In your testimony, you talk about how after Superstorm Sandy, over 10 billion gallons of raw and partially treated sewage flooded streets and ruined homes. This raises an important point about the need to think about resilience to the impacts of climate change and extreme weather when making investments to repair and replace aging water pipes. We need to be thinking ahead. For example, we have water pipes in New York that are over 100 years old, and nearly half of New York City's water pipes were built before World War II. We should be thinking about the next 50 to 100 years from now when we design projects today. What should we be doing to improve how we make decisions about water infrastructure investments to take into account extreme weather, sea level rise, and other climate-related impacts?
Thank you, Senator. Well, one thing we need to do is make sure that we're more resilient and less vulnerable to severe events. Hurricane Sandy occurred 5 years ago, so that's already the climate history, and our infrastructure was already proven to be inadequate for how the climate was and how it is now. If the climate does worsen, that gap will only widen. So one of the things that we're doing is trying to implement green energy programs so that we're 100% off the grid. We are installing solar panels, installing a combined heat and power system to capture gas and turn it into electricity, and our goal is to be off the grid by 2020. So reducing vulnerability to reliance on the electric grid would be very important. Number one. Number two, green infrastructure in combined sewer communities is very important because so you're sucking up the stormwater and preventing it from getting into the combined sewer. In addition, as we've discussed, the infrastructure is rated at a D+, so it needs to be replaced. When it's being replaced, it ought to be replaced with the notion of the possibility of climate worsening and therefore being sized appropriately to make sure that it is properly sized for not only today's conditions but the future.
Over the past several years, we have seen drinking water emergencies across the United States, where many lives have been put at risk because of contamination from toxic chemicals. The most visible of these was in, obviously, Flint, Michigan. But closer to home for me, like people of Hoosick Falls and upstate New York, have been experiencing nothing short of a tragedy because their drinking water has been tainted with the chemical PFOA. And we've seen it across my state in places like Newburgh and on Long Island. So when we talk about water infrastructure, we need to also be talking about how we're going to keep our drinking water safe. This is a real challenge for small communities like Hoosick Falls that have limited resources. And this is for the whole panel. How can we do a better job of helping small communities test for and address contaminants like PFOA in their drinking water systems? Mr. Frazee?
I think the USDA and EPA need to, address those issues in small communities like where I'm from. Help from our government, federal government. That's.
Thank you. Mr. Kricun?
Thank you, Senator. Well, for example, in the instance of lead, I think lead awareness is very important. We not only need to make sure that we're treating water at the source, the drinking water treatment plants itself, but making sure that the conduits from the plant to the home and also the internal plumbing within the home are also subject to lead plumbing. Most homes built prior to 1980 could have lead solder. So even if the water coming from the water treatment plant is safe, the children, users of the water may be contaminated with lead. Their water may be contaminated with lead just by sitting overnight in lead plumbing. So I think lead awareness is making sure they're aware of filters or running the water for 30 to 45 seconds to reduce the risk and could mitigate a significant portion of that lead issue. With regard to contaminants and chemicals, I agree with Mr. Frazee that it's important to have federal and state assistance and maybe even hub utilities nearby. If there's a larger city nearby that might be able to lend resources to smaller communities and leverage that, I think we need to get these small communities, whether it be urban or rural, as much assistance as possible.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis?
In terms of testing, the testing that needs to occur is both at source water, so rivers, ponds, streams, but also as it's coming out of the tap. And so it's such a distributed system. You need lots of people out doing it. I think this issue of water testing, point-based testing, is a great opportunity for schools and citizen scientists, and that could be through programs at NOAA or somewhere else to get resources to school programs or other organizations who can go out on a consistent basis with established protocols for testing, collect that data, and send it in to the proper water management officials. On your previous question, if I could for 2 seconds, one of the issues we have with planning infrastructure to be more resilient, and this is not a coastal issue or an inland issue, we have great divergence between states but also within states about the actual data that they're using to project how much rainfall we might have or what climate conditions might be. I know in Illinois we have some communities who are using data from the 1960s that was projecting out weather events. Well, all of that was based on information that they'd collected before the 1960s. And so as precipitation patterns change, if you're using data from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you're not able to size infrastructure appropriately for what we predict to be weather events. We're always looking backwards when we size the infrastructure because that's the precipitation data that we're using. So getting greater consistency, one, to get everyone to update and use the latest data on precipitation projections in particular would be helpful, but then greater consistency across communities so that we can get better best practices out there on how we size and build this infrastructure across states. We can't be building stuff for 2060 using data from 1960.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Senator Duckworth.
Well, just want to thank the chairman for having this hearing. This is incredibly useful and I think eye-opening for many people. I think one of the things we've not touched on that bears further looking into is the public infrastructure system, especially when it comes to public schools. There are many, many public schools in this country that are built well before the 1980s. And as you talk about the water that sits in the schools overnight, you can actually go into a school and test the water. And this has happened in Chicago, where you have one drinking fountain that fails the lead test and one that passes. And until you replace the entire piping system within the school itself, you're never going to resolve the problem. And this is going to be a problem for rural communities, communities that don't have the resources and the high tax base. And so this, this just reinforces the need for real infrastructure investment. And I really just want to thank the chairman for bringing this to everyone's attention. Thank you.
No, thank you. And again, thank you for pointing out this is, as the witnesses have, and even the witnesses here, where you've got a very urban area, very rural area, and essentially with the same problems. So we appreciate you very much, Senator Duckworth, and your staff for the job they've done and helping us get ready for this. I appreciate my staff. Thank you all for coming and testifying. This has been just a very helpful hearing as we go forward. And with that, mentioning that the record will be open for 2 weeks for any addition, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.